Hi everyone, I'm here with Erwin and with Pieter, VP of Innovation and Team Lead Data Science at the Port of Antwerp-Bruges. Hi there. Hi Erwin. Hi Pieter. Maybe to kick off a little bit, maybe you can both explain a bit what you do at the port. Pieter, you're Team Lead Data Science, so that means you're leading the data science team, but what does it actually mean?
Yeah, hello Davio, and thanks for having us here. I'm the responsible for the data science team at Port of Antwerp-Bruges, and it means that we are developing all the AI and advanced analytics strategies for the port, working on a variety of AI topics to help and support our colleagues in different departments to improve their daily jobs or daily work.
Yeah, I can imagine in the port there's a lot of things you can do there.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. It's like Erwin told me when I started there, it's like a bit the candy store here, the port. And there's such a variety of candy there, and there's a lot of potential at the port to do things with data. So it's every day when I go to work, it feels indeed like this is some playground where we can do fantastic things with the data and with the AI technology that's available.
All right, we'll come back to that, what you're doing. Erwin, how's your candy store?
Well, I started 7 years ago as the Chief Digital and Innovation Officer. So I was the responsible for driving the digital transformation of the port authority and in extension also the port platform. And there was also at the time already a focus on innovation, but that was more focused on internal innovation and creating an innovation culture. So post-merger, you know that we merged with the Port of Bruges, and after the integration, I was asked by the CEO to become the VP, the Vice President of Innovation, with a focus on how can we use or drive innovation towards the enablement of strategic goals, mitigation of corporate risks, and in creation of new business capabilities. So let's say the focus of innovation has shifted a little bit, or is about to shift.
Can you explain those things a bit? Because there are heavy terms, but what do they actually mean?
Well, I think the first one is the most obvious one. You have strategic goals, and in trying to achieve strategic goals, there is, of course, the opportunity or maybe even the need to use innovation to get there, to do new stuff or do stuff in a different way, which is my Mickey Mouse definition of innovation. Okay, because it doesn't always have to be bleeding edge technology that you implement to call it innovation. You also have to reflect on, can we do things in a different way? Exactly. Now, corporate risks are risks that block your goals in terms of your strategic goals. Things that hinder the development of the port, that might create really big issues. And since a couple of years, we have a corporate risk report. So every year, the audit department lists the 15 most important risks of the company. Okay. Now, a risk is a problem, but if you ask yourself the question, okay, it's a problem, but maybe there's also an opportunity behind, then you often see that is the case. And that points in the direction of innovation in trying to solve a problem or a challenge. So that's the second thing. And then, of course, we are a port. Where do we see opportunities for new business development? In our case, new cargo flows, new activities in the port platform. So, for example, the energy transition, moving away from fossil fuels into new feedstock like hydrogen, is for us a gigantic opportunity for new cargo flows. Because hydrogen or ammonia or methanol, the new, let's say, feedstock of the future for chemistry and so on, is going to be shipped around the world via ships. So for a port, that's fairly important. So those are a couple of examples of how you can use innovation in enabling strategic goals, in solving risks, and turning them into opportunities. And finally, in creating new business opportunities.
All right, cool. So immediately jumping to you, because Pieter, Team Lead Data Science in the Port of Antwerp, it's a huge organization. You're doing tons of different, in terms of
the port platform is huge.
Yeah, the platform. Let's call it like that. And is that how you call it, the port platform?
Yeah, because the port authority is, it's 1,800 people. That's not small. But in the port itself, the entire port platform and all the companies are working there. That's 60,000 people working there. Direct employment and indirect, another 80,000. So 140,000 in total.
One of the biggest ports of Europe. So,
second.
That has
The
to be
second.
very clear. So team lead data science, what are some things that you have been working on the past years?
Well, that's a good question indeed. There is a lot of things that we can do. As Erwin explains, we mainly focus on the company itself, the Port Authority, to support there in different strategic goals. One of the main goals is the operational excellence that we want to succeed, where we support the biggest department of the port, the operations. We have a lot of data in that context. We have a lot of digital maturity, let's say. So we have a lot of data that is available for us to explore and to find solutions to support those people in the field. And we work there in the AI context on different solutions, going from smart camera solutions to natural language processing technology to apply on speech-to-text technology. We work on predictions in the nautical context. And recently we also started, for example, a project on how can we improve planning or optimize planning over the entire nautical chain of port, which is a pretty challenging project, which already found the first ideas, I think, years ago, and when Erwin explained a vision on that. And we are now really trying to take that vision into a really tangible first MVPs, and then try to further develop it into working products.
To build on that last example, just to give you an idea of the complexity, Port of Antwerp, the Port of Antwerp platform is a very complex port. From a
complex also relative to others?
Yes,
or?
yeah. The reason is that we are an inland port. So that means if you come in with a ship, you have to sail 80 kilometers alongside a river. And then you arrive in Antwerp with a ship that is often longer than the river is wide. So we need to be absolutely sure that when you arrive, you can go immediately into a lock or immediately to your mooring spot on one of the container terminals in front of the lock. Now, the entire coordination of an in or outbound ship, you have the sea pilot, you have the river pilot, you have the dock pilot, you have the nautical command alongside the river, you have the nautical planning team in Antwerp, you have the people responsible for lock management, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's an enormous amount of stakeholders with their own capacity and their own planning that you have to align and to coordinate. And historically, they were all done separately. And since a couple of years, we try to find synergies. And of course, a lot of these synergies are identified by means of data and doing something intelligent with it.
Yeah.
That's one of the examples.
Mm-hmm. Maybe before we dive in, because there's a lot to tell, I'm also interested a bit in how have you seen AI before, like, let's say, the ChatGPT moment? Because you've been in IT and innovation for quite some time. Yeah. You've been in data and in AI for quite some time. How have you seen it move before, let's say, 2022? Was it something that was as big on the agenda? What did you see? How did it move?
Well, let's go back to the beginning of data science in the context of Port of Antwerp-Bruges. So when I joined in 2017, I was asked to develop a new organization because IT was a little bit scattered all over the place. And one of the competence centers I created was data and analytics, because one of the prime reasons was that I saw that the organization was very much focused on using data in an operational context, which makes sense, but not in the sense of, okay, what can we learn out of data to do better? So the analytical part wasn't there. So I created a department to increase the maturity of the organization, which meant a couple of things. First of all, making sure that we could connect and that we had available the data we needed. So cutting through data silos, building a good data architecture, adding new data sources. I think 5 years ago, we didn't collect the tracking data of ships. In the maritime context, it's called AIS data, comparable to tracking data from an airplane. So it sends out every so many seconds, I'm this ship, I'm sailing in that direction, that speed, and so on. We never collected that data. So making sure you have the data.
So never collected, you received it, but you didn't store it, basically.
No, we didn't store it. We just used it to understand, okay, the ship is there, fine. but we never started to analyze it in terms of are there certain patterns that we can discover. So data access and data architecture was one, data quality was two, also a link to ownership, maintenance, and so on. So the good old topics of the last couple of decades haven't gone, on the contrary. And then the third part was how can we go beyond what we currently do? And that was the domain of analytics, data science, and so on. So since 2018, we gradually evolved in making sure that all these components became mature. So ChatGPT, when it emerged, was not our epiphany moment for AI.
Okay.
It was just another
tool
opportunity, another tool in the box, an opportunity that, and we will talk about it, Pieter, that we were able to use because all the things before were in place. Yeah. We were, and we will talk about that, but we were able to go really fast with large language models and generative AI because the foundation was there.
Yeah, I think before the ChatGPT was there, and really we were really impressed with what it meant and what it could be. And I think a lot of people also became more aware of what AI could do because it was so tangible and so human, the interactions with the GPT. But in our road in AI before, in data science at the port, we started with small projects, and we felt there was a lot of potential. So we gradually grew over time. And we got more traction and more attention from the entire organization. So we felt we were growing and doing things in the right way. So it was not that we felt that there was kind of winter and that ChatGPT brought a new AI summer. We always felt that we were on a good wave and that we saw potential in it. But then, of course, when ChatGPT came, we were talking about it earlier. People, as I said, it was more tangible, and they felt if they were communicating with this AI system, it felt so human. So it was more. And
did it change the dynamics as well? Because in a lot of companies, we hear the past ChatGPT. First, we had to take our time to onboard people on the idea of AI, and the ChatGPT moment turned it a bit around, and sometimes even exaggerated. Like we all want ChatGPT, and AI is only ChatGPT as well. That's also things that we hear. How did that change it for you? Did you also have that moment?
We noticed that there was a lot of enthusiasm because when it was launched in 2022, people were testing it, and we also did some inspiration sessions with colleagues to see, hey, can this technology help you? So we saw that there was a lot of enthusiasm over the entire organization. We are now working more on that technology. We have our own virtual assistant based on the GPT technology that is supporting colleagues, and where we notice that there is also a lot of enthusiasm to use it, but we still see that there's a lot of potential. So we know that the enthusiasm that we saw at the first weeks of ChatGPT, that is going down a bit again. So we have to further motivate people to explore it further in the future, because we know that there's a lot of potential in that AI technology. And that there is always one moment that when there's something new, they all think it's interesting, but then they have to think, how can this help me in my job
beyond
or in my work?
the actual value.
Yeah. Okay, but that's not any different compared to previous technologies. You have a group of leading people who, for them, these new capabilities top of mind in terms of what can we do with it. But the large majority of the company, after the initial hype period, it fades away. So it's a question of education, building relevant applications that they can use. Because ChatGPT provided us new capabilities to solve issues that we tried before and didn't work.
So can you give an example?
Well, the brilliant example is, you know that in the maritime industry, a lot of communication is still radio-based, VHF communication. I think 4 years ago, we had the idea, what if we could translate speech into text?
So pre-whisper, basically.
Yeah. I think it was even 2019, because you started the first experiment before I arrived at the port.
Yeah. And the reason was, you need to have a license to use a VHF, because it's very protocol driven. I call upon you. You say, okay, I acknowledge that I hear you. I tell what I need to tell you. You acknowledge, and then it's over. because it's an open communication channel. Everybody can listen in, so you have to behave. Now, if all of a sudden that conversation keeps on going, and on top of that there is emotion in the conversation, that's something we want to know, because there are a lot of VHF channels in operation in the port, but we don't continuously listen to them. But what if we could translate speech into text, and then with an algorithm spot these emotions or interactions, and then say, well, somebody from the nautical command, you have to listen in because there's something going on. And we have proven that by listening to communication that we had recorded, that you could almost predict that there was something going to happen, like a collision. So once you have it in text, you can do sentiment analysis. I saw that on a Google conference already before 2017. We tried it, and basically it was disappointing. It didn't work. But we tried it again after ChatGPT appeared on the market, and I think with the same sound file, success was, 95% accurate? No. It was amazing. So all of a sudden, something that didn't work 3-4 years before was almost perfect to implement as a building block in future applications. Now, you have to know that we have people of the Harbor Master Office that when there is something happened...
The Harbor Master Office, what does that mean?
Well, you have a Harbor Master who is responsible for safety and security in the port, who also has been authorized by the Flemish government to act as an officer. Because, you can walk in and outside the port, but they have their own rules and regulations. And they are, together with a team of people, making sure that those regulations are respected. And there are people who have to investigate things that happened, like a collision, a calamity, or whatever. And they have to listen into hours of audio files and video feeds. Of course, if you can build in a technology where you can query these things, and that you get the segments that you're interested in, well, that speeds up their process dramatically. So now we have that building block that we can integrate in future use cases. But that's a perfect example of something that is evolving at an exponential rate. Doesn't work now. Try again, and again, because eventually it will. And we still have, Pieter, data sets available for companies coming in, say, we can do this. That's interesting. You have a data set, go and prove it.
And if it works, then
and if it works, we'll buy it, something like that, or we fund you to make it a production-ready component.
All right, cool.
And that's to the point of Pieter. That's the candy store. We have use cases for whatever technology you mentioned. We can use it.
A candy store on water. What would a kid want more?
Yeah.
But so that's what you've been doing now. There's a lot of things. Can you give a bit of an overview of what all the things are that you are doing?
Yeah, of course. But when I talk about it, of the use case we do, I always like to use a kind of movie metaphor. Erwin will know what I'm talking about. Because, I often make the reference to Minority Report. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've seen the movie. It's
a long time ago.
Yeah, it's already 20 years old, I guess.
It's the one with Tom Cruise? No?
With Tom Cruise, yeah. So now we are 20 years later, and it feels pretty realistic. But to make the reference to the movie, you have Tom Cruise there, who has to detect or to see that kind of crime will happen in the future. And he has some kind of creatures or humans that can see the future and that feed him with information on a big screen that he can make a decision, there will be a crime happening, so we have to intervene right now to prevent this crime from happening. And I think it's a nice metaphor of what we try to do to support our operational people. First of all, you have Tom Cruise or the human in the loop, and that's also important for us.
Is your ambition to be Tom Cruise?
We don't have Tom Cruise in the company, but we have a very...
would help for adoption of technology.
Very skilled people, of course.
On the female side.
Yes, but it's important for us that we still have the notion of a human in the loop that can make decisions, because we don't want to replace and build a Terminator if we have to talk about another movie. We really want the human in the loop, but we want to feed them with the relevant information. And Tom Cruise is not looking at his screen to millions of text files or thousands of hours of video. He has some video material or text that is relevant for him.
He gets the analysis already.
Yeah. And that's
so
also...
they can act upon it.
Yeah. That's also what we want to do in terms of the computer vision cases that we do, to not bring all the camera feeds from the 800 plus cameras and all the drones that we have in the port to our operational people. they have access to that camera feed, but what we try to do with AI is to detect if there are things that are interesting to in a kind of situational awareness context.
For instance, oil spillage or anything like
exactly.
that.
So feed them with information that they can make a quick decision. We have, for example, a case right now where we detect if a vessel is passing by in the camera. We link it with our internal database where we also have information on the ship, and we see if there is a match. That's a good sign. If we see something on the camera but we don't see it in our database, it's the data that Erwin talked earlier about, AIS. It's a position of a ship. We have no match. There is something going on. We have to alarm our operational colleagues to say, hey, here's a ship sailing, but we have no track of it.
So that they can spend their time on the things that are relevant and not on just looking at video.
And on the moment it happens, because keep in mind, we're responsible for an area that is 120 square kilometers big.
Which is something can you compare that with something? Because
well, the Port of Antwerp, the Antwerp port platform, 120 square kilometers, that's 6 times the city of Antwerp in between a highway.
Okay.
6 times.
Yes. And Antwerp is not a small city.
No. And so if you're responsible for safety and security and operational management in that area, how do you make sure that you know what is going on the moment it happens? So that's why we have this metaphor of we want to create a digital nervous system on top of the physical port where we mimic the human senses so that we can hear, see, feel, smell, touch what is taking place in real time, and we can act upon it. And of course, that's all based on data and insights that you get out of data, which then drives our data science initiatives, not to use the fancy word AI. So in nautical planning, that's a big part. Everything that has to do with safety and security, environmental calamities, stuff like that. So those are the prime domains where you can deploy data science to understand it's happening now. And I tell you, also based on correlation of data, where it's coming from.
So your minority report,
Yes.
That's one big thing.
Yeah, that's the metaphor with the different because the ChatGPT or the large language model AI technology is helping us to more explore textual information, to also give the relevant insights from text to our colleagues.
You have your own version of your implementation of a ChatGPT internally.
So we call it. It's a virtual employee called Apica, and she's part of the Microsoft Teams environment.
You like to say that, eh? She's part.
She's part. She's a virtual colleague.
Yeah.
I used it this morning. I've sent the analysis of what I did with her. I had a discussion about a couple of documents and so on. It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
So how popular is it? So you have 1,800 people using it, or how?
No, far from it. That wasn't the expectation. I don't.
No. We have around 250 monthly users, unique users. Still, seeing every week new people finding their ways. Also,
and is it just a copy paste ChatGPT, or did you add anything on top of it? What is capable of doing?
Yeah, we started with the functionalities you also have in ChatGPT, but we tried to add a security layer on top of it. That information that you feed to the assistant is not going to the outer world. So we keep information internal. And then we started to develop from that point where we have the GPT functionalities to also see if we can use Assistant to chat with internal knowledge. So give it access to our internal database or our data platform. And we have now the first results of chatting and asking nautical questions to Apica, where she can find the information in our physical database and give an answer in a human language.
So that
to
means
the users.
It writes the queries, the SQL queries or whatever itself, and then gives you back the information.
Yes. So she's
and
going.
How well does that work?
She's going through a reasoning process where she tries to first understand the question. So she's looking at what words are you using, what concepts. Do I find that concepts in the description of the data we have? And once she finds them, then she can go to the physical data and she writes a query herself, and then she provides an answer. We did the proof of concept end last year where we saw very nice results. And now we are really working towards the first operational products, where we noticed that from different testers in operational setting, in the IT teams, that the results are really qualitative, and that we have a good feeling of giving this to the business user later on, that they can really find insights from operational.
Yeah, it sounds
activities in the data.
relatively simple if you say it like that. But if you, from first
Yeah.
of all, from getting it to work, it's not that easy. And also in terms of impact, if you think of 10 years ago, or it's not 10 years ago, 5 years ago, if you wanted to have a report based on a SQL query, you had to go to, I'm assuming, a BI team. You had to ask it. Then the query the first time was wrong, so they had to come back, and then you have to do ping pong 4 or 5 times before you got the information. If you're lucky that they have time and it's not put in the queue for in 2 weeks. Yeah. So in terms of impact and complexity, can you give a bit?
Exactly.
It's also possible to add to that depending on which person you ask it, you could have a maybe slightly different solution as well, or answer as well. So
going back to what I said initially, once you have the foundations in place, you can speed it up, because you're right. It sounds easy, but it isn't. So in order for the large language model to understand what you're asking, you need to have proper definitions about what you're talking. So it ties into our knowledge graph, which is part of our data architecture. That didn't come falling out of the sky. It takes a lot of work, data dictionaries and so on, proper definitions. Once you have that in place, then you know that the large language model is not just making things up. Then you can look at, because we did it in sort of a sequence of bots to understand what kind of query you're writing and why. You told me that even it could say, well, I'm not able to do so because I can't find the data, or I'm confused about the definition, which also helps you to understand what is wrong with our data quality. And then finally, you can indeed provide that capability that historically was always asked to data, to business analysts, or to business BI consultants or BI people, because we call it internally. The goal is we want to be able to talk to our database. Sort of the ball.com of data. Those are the metaphors that we use. We use the ball.com of the data.
As of now, the things that will go through my head, if I think of you, it's really Tom Cruise in a candy store surfing on ball.com.
We're really good in coming up with these things, because I just mentioned Apica. Apica stands for Advanced Port Information and Control Assistant, which hints at the big nautical platform Apica. But there you also see then the vision, because we want to move from assistant to an assistant. The combination of technology and a human being, where a human being is helped to understand what is taking place so that he or she can take the proper decisions. And it's an assistant because we don't want to replace. We know, or we believe, that the combination of technology and a human being is always stronger than humans alone or technology alone.
So Apica is then now evolving. So you've added a few features. There's a roadmap there. There's other features, or is that something of which you're saying we're happy for now?
No, we're never happy. We're never happy. We always go to the next level. Now, Apica is the vision, and underneath Apica you have a digital twin, you have a chatbot. You now are going to have Apica planning, and so on and so on. It's becoming a suite of solutions that are part of the vision.
Which is then a broader platform within a digital platform within the port.
Which also is helping us to evolve from historical applications, where when there is legacy or we decide to outphase, it goes into Apica capabilities. So the most important thing is that we have this vision of where we want to go. So why are we doing this, and how would it resonate? And then the metaphors help to make people understand what it is all about. Because otherwise, you can't expect that for, let's say, an average user, something like a digital twin makes sense, because you start talking about it. It has to become tangible. And to the point of Pieter, 250 users. Out of 1,800, well, there are 500 knowledge workers and the rest are operational people. So I think the prime focus group is the 500. So we still have a lot of people to go. But gradually, and certainly if they start to inspire one another by, hey, look what I did. Really cool stories about somebody who spent 6 hours trying to analyze a document and make a summary out of it. And I came in and said, well, I've done the same thing. It took me 5 minutes with ChatGPT, the Apica. And they really went mad. Like, I spent 6 hours on this. Yeah, you're stupid, not me. And by the way, you're 25, I'm 54. You were the one who had to tell me what to do with it, not me telling you. Well, they didn't do that again, right?
So Apica, that's one major vision under which there are different initiatives. So you have your internal assistant. What are other things which are there for the moment?
The realization of that entire digital twin. So that's again a basket of projects and initiatives, like computer vision, smart cameras, speech to text, and so on. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what we're doing with cameras.
Yeah. Or the digital twin, to give you an idea on that, is that it's because Erwin told earlier we have the digital nervous system, but then you capture a lot of information what is happening in the port. Of course, you also want to feed that information to users, and therefore the digital twin is a virtual replica of the port where you see that information
in context,
accessible for the operational people in real time, that they can see what's happening here. If you surpass thresholds, then alarms go off, and then they can go find out what is happening.
How do I picture that digital twin? Is it literally a 3D version of the port?
No. Well, we experimented because when we started to play around with the idea of, okay, does a digital twin make sense? We had an inspirational phase where a couple of creative people could completely go in any direction they wanted. And of course, one of the first iterations was a 3D version and even a VR version. Well, that helped us to make the point. Funny stories around that implementation. But we found out that, okay, that's cool, but that's not what we have to focus on right now. We have to go to the foundation first, make sure that it works. And a 3D is an add-on, but is not necessary.
So what is necessary then? What is it?
Having being able to get the data you want. Because what is a digital twin? A digital twin is, in fact, nothing more than bringing into one environment the data layers you're interested in to understand what is taking place. For sure, if you can combine it with an algorithm that tells you what is going on. And let me give you an example. Suppose you are from environmental services. Now, we have a network in the port of air quality monitors that measure volatile organic components. So stuff that's common in chemistry, benzene, toluene, and all these kind of things. Often substances that have a specific smell and are also irritating. So it's important for us that if we detect one of these substances, that triggers an alarm.
So that was a few minutes ago. I was thinking you were having about the nervous, the senses of. I was thinking smelling. Do they really have smelling? But so you have smelling as well.
We have smell. So it detects that there is something going on. So that's a data source because one of these sensors triggers an alarm. If you combine that with wind speed and wind direction, data source number 2, data source number 3, the location of tanker ships in the port, AIS data, and then an algorithm that is able to say, well, the source of emission is most likely that ship, or it's coming from shore side, then you know where you need to look at. And if you can then turn a camera in the direction of where you think it's coming from, you can see whether there's, for example, an accidental degasification taking place. You could even send a drone out there to take a sample. I've just mentioned 5 or 6.
So the digital twin for you is actually where all of these senses come together
in the context you're interested in. So the digital twin doesn't exist because somebody from nautical management wants to see different information. Somebody from the harbor master office wants to see different information, but it's always in context. I'm interested in that kind of information, and which you can then translate into an alert by saying, okay, if one of these air quality monitors gives an alert, notify me so that I can look at it.
All right, so the digital twin. You've mentioned Apica planning as well. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, that's one of the newest projects, and we mentioned it earlier. Erwin explained a bit the complexity of ships arriving or departing at the port. That there's a lot of parties involved, and that everybody has to make is part of the bigger planning. And they all have a certain capacity, and they try to do the best planning possible based on their available capacity. But no one has an end-to-end view on what is the other's capacity and how can we help those ships the best way possible. So the idea...
If something goes wrong, it becomes one big ping pong of everyone trying to solve
because
it,
there is
nobody has somewhere.
There is no holistic planning, so if it starts to go wrong, it goes wrong. Because you don't have any resilience anymore to deal with that.
It's a bit like when one train fails, you see the whole NMBS failing almost.
And on top of that, you have no escape route. Once a ship is inbound, you can't just stop it. And it's not just a question of avoiding that things go wrong, but if you plan from your perspective and another one from his or her perspective, it's always going to be suboptimal. So in certain moments, you will have too much capacity, and a little bit later, too little. And you cannot tell somebody, well, be advised, be aware, in 3 hours from now, you need to have additional capacity, or all of us are going to have a problem. And that's now the goal, to have this holistic planning in place.
Yeah. So the idea is that we now take a kind of helicopter view over all those silos and to see what is the demand from the shipping sites, and then what is the capacity available over all those parties together. And can AI then support that to make an optimal planning based on the demand and the available capacity? On an operational level to support the operational planning, but also on a tactic and strategical level where we can strategically, for example, simulate if we expect more ships, if we have less capacity, what is the scenario that could happen? For management to make decisions, how can we also towards the future where we expect other types of ships coming in, bigger ships, how we can...
Or these kinds of things then?
Expansion, but that is always a very long-term story in Western Europe. But for example, we now have the possibility to allow ships on the river which have a depth of 16 meters. Yeah, but that means in operational that it's dynamic keel. There is a dynamic keel measurement. In layman terms, if the moment the ship enters the river, it would hit the ground in Antwerp.
Okay.
But with the upcoming tide, taking that into consideration, it can reach Antwerp. Okay. Now, those ships have a tide window. They can only arrive and start their journey within a certain time period. That's also something you have to take into consideration. Some ships need to have priority for specific reasons. Also things, once you have that basic planning in mind, you can add insights from historical data. An example, many of the ships coming into the port are regulars. And then the pilot steps on board in Flushing, and half an hour before he's in Antwerp says, be advised, I need 2 tugboats. We can predict that because they always ask for 2 tugboats. But we also know that if the wind goes beyond 7 or 8 Beauforts from a specific angle, they will need 3. That's something you want to know with all the in and outbound traffic hours in advance, so that you can say to the tugboat companies on the river, commercial tugboat operations, guys, you need to have an additional tugboat in operations from 2 years from now, or we're going to have a problem. Okay? So once you have that backbone in place.
Can you give a bit of a perspective on that? What is the difference between not having that third one ready? Does that mean that ship is an hour in delay, or what does that mean? Just to give a bit of a...
Well, it just basically saying that you cannot enter the river because we cannot tell them halfway through, stop, throw out your anchor and wait a minute. That's not feasible.
But it can then have, because maybe you can help the one ship with the extra tugboats, but there are other ships arriving, also departing, that they have delays in their journeys, and then you have a cascade effect where all the ships...
Cascading butterfly effect, which you have proven. We've done a lot of analysis over a couple of years, first of all, to make the potential of doing an overall planning tangible and motivate people to let go a little bit of their own autonomy, because... You're sensitive, so we're not going to say, well, we're going to do the central planning and just have to do it. We're going to do it in a sort of approach where you say, okay, we've done this planning, and we give you now the feedback to say, well, in an ideal situation, that's the capacity you need to provide, and then they still have the opportunity to say yes or no, or we can't or cannot do. But we have proven that there is this butterfly effect. If somebody all of a sudden says, well, I cannot deliver, that you have a cascading effect. That was very clear. Of course, you need to understand in a collaborative way, why did that happen? It shouldn't, because you shouldn't end up in a sort of a blaming kind of thing. So, and I think that was a really good strategic move from the COO to say, listen, I'm the biggest stakeholder. I'll put my cards on the table. And if it sucks, okay, it sucks. And then the question is, what can we do about it? Not blaming. But that takes a while before everybody's in the same mood. But now we're there because the data doesn't lie. True?
Yeah.
So you've been through a journey now, Apica planning. Are there other... So you have a lot of drones. You're using them to do some automatic detection. For instance, oil spillage is one of the things you've been working on. how has your journey been so far until now? What are some of the roadblocks you encountered or the challenges you had?
Well,
Or it was very easy. It was all super simple.
Okay, the starting point is as follows. When we said in 2018, we want to be able to fly around with autonomous drones that fly further than a human being can see the drone, which is in technical terms beyond visual line of sight, over the port, we had said in one sentence 3 things that were legally impossible. So was it easy? I don't think so. And it's not because of the technology, but because of the legal framework that wasn't there. And convincing federal authorities to allow us to do that. And okay, it made them afraid, which I can understand, keeping in mind, you're flying around with drones in an area where you have high voltage lines, where you have 45 Seveso regulated companies, aka the chemical cluster, where you have things that move called ships, where you have a nuclear power station, an inbound route of an airport of Antwerp.
Nothing can go wrong.
So why on earth would you want to fly around with drones? Because it makes a lot of sense, but it's the most complex area you can imagine. So it took us a while from a legal perspective, in all honesty, much longer than we had anticipated, but still we were the first on the planet that had authorization to do it. We have the first generation of autonomous drones, and in the meantime, a lot of manned drones, smaller drones, which allowed us to prove that there were business cases and use cases. And then in the meantime, we worked on technology like being able to spot an oil spill day and night with a specific type of camera and so on. We now know what we need to implement. So we know that we can go to an operational phase. We still have work to do, but there is we had that meeting last week with the COO, said, well, I really want to now push the throttle in making drone use cases operational. For checking ships that are moored, for detecting oil spills and other use cases. Because we have proven, we all acknowledge there's meat on the bone, but we're not there yet. But it's starting to become. And we have the building blocks to do so. So also for Pieter, that means that once the drone is flying, the video feeds come in, that the algorithms have to be developed to say, well, this is an oil spill, this is strange, this is something else. And that all that information presumably is going to end up in the digital twin where somebody says, okay, this is something I need to take a look at.
Yeah, maybe to elaborate a bit on that is that getting the drones operational and getting the data in is one of the challenges. And then we had, the AI component itself, that's often not the challenge anymore. So AI or computer vision, it's so advanced and you can find crazy things on the camera feeds. But then it was the question, how can you put that intelligence back to the users? So you had to think of your computer vision architecture in the entire organization for the drones, but also fixed cameras, that we combine all those eyes in the ports. So that was also a challenge to get a clear view on how can we set up an architecture that is future-proof. If there are solutions in the market, how can we implement them? If you want to develop something, how we can implement it and make a hybrid architecture from it that is usable in the future. And then also you notice if you talk to partners that they have fantastic solutions, but then if you ask what of those solutions we have operational, often it gets quiet at the other end of the table. So it's always it's always on AI. It can do fantastic things. But the challenge for us, it's not only the AI, it's the broader context. How can we bring it to...
It's the roof of your house and everything underneath has to be able... Because saying, well, we detect oil spills with a drone, well, that means you need to have a drone, authorization to fly with a drone. You need a specific type of camera. You have to be able to get the data in real time, so 5G or a satellite connection, what have you. You need to have compute power and intelligence to analyze the data in real time, and then you have to send it to some environment where people can act upon. Well, that's 5 or 6 building blocks that each of them can take you a year, 2 years, sometimes 4 years to get them into place.
And it needs to be in a, let's say, enterprise-grade way. It can't just...
Yeah, well, and it has to be secure, and it has to be scalable, and so on. Because playing around with technology to discover the potential, that's fine. But we are critical infrastructure. We're also NIST compliant. So once something goes from experimentation into daily operations, well, okay, then the entire book comes on the table on what needs to be there in order to do that. And of course, we acknowledge that, okay, I used to be responsible for both sides of the same coin. So I said, there's no way we're going to go from an experiment into operations without respecting cybersecurity, stability, performance, blah, 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 because we cannot afford that. These are things that have to work 24/7, that have to provide the things we want to see now and not 5 seconds later, because that can be too late. Huh? So these requirements are pretty tough. Huh? And that's good, but data architecture, so many building blocks. But now after 5-6 years of hard work, we have this catalog of building blocks. So it becomes much easier for us to facilitate use cases because it's there. But it doesn't come falling out of the sky. It's not just about a box of software. It's not like the magic bullet. It doesn't exist. So I'm an old guy. So all these other stuff from the last 2 decades, they're still relevant. If your data sucks, it will still suck after AI. I can tell you that. If your architecture isn't there, you won't get access to the data. If it isn't secure, it's going to fall apart or hacked or whatever. That's the reality. So, and that's probably why the hype is going down, because as always, a hype is a hype. And people think, there's the magic chicken. No, it doesn't exist. It's still hard work. Yeah. And then a lot of them run away.
So you've been talking about computer vision. Have you experienced the same with LLMs and these kinds of things? Was that a similar challenge? And then a similar benefit of having that setup being done well already?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. I think the difference from that, LLM technology, it's not the AI development itself anymore. You get the fantastic algorithms that are available to use right away. And then it was to set up the infrastructure around it. But it was in our technology stack, we could relatively quickly integrate it with the first governance and security layers around it. So it was the implementation of that technology that was rather quickly done, let's say. We're still thinking about different aspects that we need to continuously monitor and work on. Also in the security, you don't want an access control. You don't want everyone in the entire organization to have access to all the information that is at the assistant. So we work on those aspects continuously. But to set it up in the first phase, also the MVP we developed was in a few months' time that we had it operational, available for all colleagues in the organization. I think we started a project beginning this year. And in April, we went live with the Apica chatbot with some first features available. Mm-hmm. Today, we have new features that are coming and it continuously evolves. But we saw that that technology we could rather quickly adapt.
And also, we never had to go through these internal discussions on should we, could we, what are the dangers and so on. Not being stuck for 5 months with legal and so on. So, actually, I'm quite proud that we are an organization that had the open-mindedness to say, you know what, we're just going to roll it out to the entire company, instead of having these endless discussions. Should we, could we? And just see what happens. It's better to do that than to inspire people to go to the public ChatGPT where they start to throw in corporate documents and so on. That's not what you want. So we said, listen, don't do that, but we'll provide you with the same capabilities internally in a safe and responsible environment, and use it. And some of the reactions the first couple of days were, oh, this is my best new colleague. Okay, fine. And there are still a lot of people say, well, why should I care? Well, you're gonna figure out sooner or later why you should care.
Now, how do you see that evolving then? Is there a roadmap? Is there what's the plan in the near future?
Specifically around the LLMs.
Just the LLMs, but the LLMs, the plan for AI or how? So let me frame the question first differently. Specifically on LLMs, there's a huge debate, rather on socials, but amongst some experts as well, that it will become more autonomous. Typically, they already use for the self-driving cars, they map that, and you have the 5 levels of autonomous AI. There's a lot of talk that they will expect autonomous agents, and you have that already a little bit. What do you expect? Do you expect it, and how will that influence the things that you've been doing so far?
Yeah, for the roadmap, currently we look to work on the the technology as is, because when we started developing a roadmap, we said we are not going to look further than 3 to 6 months because we don't know how it will evolve over time. So let's look what the features are that we can develop today and work on that. Now we still have a roadmap for 3 to 6 months ahead, where we really look at expanding the internal knowledge base, bring that to the virtual assistant, see that colleagues can get also more value from it because they have access to really internal knowledge, not only what GPT is finding on the World Wide Web. But we also closely with our partners check what is happening on the market and see if, like you say about agents, 1 year ago we were also already discussing, is this the next big thing? We still continuously see if there are new possibilities there, to see if we have to over time also look into that direction. But now that's only more like a rumor or a first talks about it. We are not going to directly look into it. We want the value from what is already available there. But it's possible that in 6 months, our roadmap will totally change, because like the ChatGPT release, it was there at one moment and it was so mature that you said, okay, we have to explore this further. So maybe in 6 months, we start working on our first agent because we see that there is potential to use the technology to develop it. So,
well, the not outspoken strategy is that we have planted a lot of seeds in order to harvest. And then also to show to the organization, well, this is the tangible potential from within our own context. And that sooner or later has to end up in a more strategic discussion on how do we see AI evolve in our company as an opportunity, but also in solving issues that we have. For example, the war on talent is something we also face. So what you want to avoid is that people get stuck up in stupid work that can be automated. So to your point, do you see automated bots and so on pop up? For sure, because there is the opportunity, but also the need to do so. Which is fine, because then you know that it's going to evolve and increase in capabilities and what have you. But there is a lot of potential, but I never believed in an approach, and also with previous technologies, we have spent endless time on discussing theoretically what is the potential and the risk. Just make it tangible. And then people can understand it, certainly if it is within their own context. And then you have to work on, okay, but then I have another idea. And the best thing that can happen is that colleagues starts to influence one another by saying, hey, see what I just did? And they say, what have you done? Oh, okay, that's interesting. It took me 15 minutes. I spent 6 hours on that. And there you go. And that's something we try to create. And then, of course, you always have the leading pack that are in close collaboration with Pieter and team. We say, I just use it. I have feedback for you, which I just did this morning. Say, maybe that triggers an idea of how we can go to the next level. Well, because we try to extend the capabilities that we can find out of the box on the market and with the big players. But for sure, if you can combine internal information, external information, multiple document analysis, which we already have, which is a very powerful capability. Compare this document with that document, make a summary, what have you. And then based on that summary, ask in-depth questions. That's days of work. I don't read documents of 40 pages anymore. Why should I? Now, okay, you need to have background in order to check if that summary makes sense. If you just blindly rely on that, then we are going to have errors as well. So you need to be aware of that, but it's fascinating. And then,
in terms of AI, in terms of data capability, the port is actually quite mature. We still see that a lot of companies are less mature, are having challenges. Okay, how do we approach this? Maybe it's a bit of a different question, but what would both of you advise them? Because it's AI is the talk of the town. But it's still you still feel that some companies are like, okay, to put this into value, that's not always an easy story.
No. But you can turn it around as well. If the first question in an AI debate is, what's the business case? You're basically saying, I don't believe it. and then you're going to go nowhere. There has to be a phase where you're open-minded to say, well, just let's do discovery. Let's try to make it tangible, figure it out, and then have the debate later on. But if you do
experimentation,
well, of course, because it's there. But what do you do with it in your own context? Yeah, that's a question that you can, in my opinion, best answer by just doing stuff and show it. Because then people say, "Oh, is that feasible?" Huh? Secondly, it will. They understand that it can be done in a reasonable time with not so much money. So we're not then talking anymore like in the 90s, millions of euros before you can even start doing stuff. And when they see the result in their own context, they say, "Oh, wait a minute, I got another idea." That's what you want to have. Huh? Now, to your point, well, we are part of an international collaboration between ports from around the world, and we have an annual academy, and of course AI was the topic of this year. And I was in a working group on large language models and so on. And basically it was, what are we doing with LLMs and with ChatGPT? Okay, port number one. Yeah, we thought after 7-8 months that it was about time to put it on the agenda of the board. Okay. Why not sooner? Yeah, we were a little bit afraid. Okay, port number two. Yeah, we are looking for enthusiastic people to think about potential use cases. That was already a year and a half after ChatGPT came on the market. Number three, we're very worried about cybersecurity. Number four, we were very worried about where is our data. Talk to your IT vendor. And then we've done this, that, we rolled it out, it's Apica, blah, 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 and so on. And they said, but how did you do that? I say, listen, it's just a mindset thing, Because it's not about money. It's not about technology. It's just about being open-minded to do something with it, experiment, go flat against the wall or not, we don't know. And just engage people, Because all of you have the same means, the same money, the same technology that I have. So I was really baffled to hear all that feedback. And what about the problems and privacy and so on? Okay, we take these things seriously, but if you try to solve these things theoretically, you won't do anything. So
yeah. And so. From your point of view, Pieter?
Yeah, when I started at the port around 5 years ago, Erwin gave me more or less a clean sheet to start with. And then it's like he said, it's not that we were starting with let's go for the killer use case that brings us the most value. It was more like doing experiments, proof of concepts. We quickly had some first results that we could show to people to evangelize them a bit on what AI could do. And from those first test experiments, we quickly found some stakeholder at the business side that wanted to do more with it. So you evolve to prove values first products. Of course, then you get to the question, if you want, we have AI products or solutions and we want to operationally use it, then you get into how do we operationalize it. So you also have to start working on your foundations then to get a stable AI infrastructure, and also to start thinking of how to bring them to operations. The MLOps, what we talk about, our first journey was, we called it the highway to production. It was a nice idea of how can we bring the first model into operations. But the first model was developed on a cloud-based historical data and then had to go to production in real time in an on-premise environment. So we had to do a lot of changes and translations. And then when we saw the end result, we had a difference with what we developed in the cloud. So it was the first steps we took, but we could improve it. And then we had a nice first model in operations, but then the second model came and the highway to productions was not really the nice highway because we had to take a bypass. And then we saw the highway going in different directions. So at that moment we said, okay, now we want to really invest also in the foundations, the MLOps, where we say if we develop new AI products in the future, there is one way how we can put them operational. But that's something that we worked after 3 years of previous projects. So the first steps was really experimenting, proof of concepts, first operational solutions, and then develop your foundations. And now we are at the turning point. Like Erwin said, we have developed a lot of those building blocks. We have a a maturity in the organization to see how it can also support more on a strategic level on different goals that you want to reach. The war on people, the environmental or sustainability challenges that are there, mobility challenges.
Our
and so on and so on and
credibility
so on.
as a port authority, because if something goes wrong in the port and somebody calls and says, what the heck is going on? The worst answer you can give is, oh, really? We're not aware of that. And that doesn't work like that. And so when you heard Pieter talk, it's in fact, it's about this fail forward attitude, MVPs. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at the end, it has to work in a corporate environment that is very specific, 24/7, 365. We don't have bank holidays. We're always open. Keep that in mind, but and so on and so on. So it's a little bit a combination of both. But and in all honesty, in the beginning, I also had to explain to people who are very much into operations and stability and so on. What the heck are they doing? They're experimenting. Yeah, but it doesn't scale and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, leave them alone, right? I guarantee you, the moment it goes from an idea to something that has to become part of production, all goes down in the waste bin. We'll start from scratch with the ideas, lessons learned, but it's not going to be the architecture they're playing around with because that's not scalable, okay? So it's also a question of trust, eh?
Yeah. You also mentioned that a big part of the port, or something that is something will be of the future, or is already here today, is autonomous shipping. What is it, and what's the status?
Well, autonomous shipping, there is even a definition at IMO, which is the International Maritime Organization, part of United Nations, and they talk about 5 levels of automation. I can tell you that in the middle of the ocean, there's not Captain Haddock standing behind the wheel, and the ship sails automatically. There's somebody on the bridge, but nobody's actually steering the ship. So that's a level of automation. The ultimate goal is to have ships where nobody's on board. The question is, does that make sense? If you're an ocean-going vessel, I don't think so, because if it goes wrong, there's nobody on board. Then what? In our case, the opportunity is with barges, inland ships, because they are 40% of all the cargo in and cargo out of the port. And it's easier to make them autonomous in the sense that they can sail autonomously, but there is always human oversight. So we're talking about remote piloted shipping. So in 2018...
So a combination of autonomous and pilots that can intervene when...
Yeah, there is somebody sitting... I'll explain the full story, then you understand what it means. So in 2018, we facilitated a startup, CFAR, to prove that their technology could work by providing them the place in a port to sail around with a ship that we provided so that they could install their technology, which helped them to prove to us that technology was mature. And then together we went to the legislator to make it happen. Because for us, it's strategic. Why? Again, so much cargo comes in via barges. There is a shortage of licensed barge captains. And that problem is getting bigger and bigger. So if we want to maintain that level, leave alone increase the amount of cargo with barges, we have to come up with innovative solutions. So if you can have ships that sail autonomously, but where there is human oversight as they sail, they look at the cameras and so on, but that is not done by a licensed barge captain. He's sitting in a second row in a remote control center where he can take over when one of these ships needs to be steered, corrected, whatever, there's a lock passage or a narrow bridge passage and so on, then one licensed barge captain can operate multiple ships.
Okay.
Yeah, and we want to go to a ratio of 1 to 3.
Efficient.
Yeah, voilà. So one barge captain can operate 3 ships. Yeah? So you multiply the amount of barge captains by 3. On top of that, 40% of the labor cost, 40% of the total cost of ownership of a barge is labor cost. So if the ship doesn't sail around, labor cost is 0 from a ship perspective. So that makes it more competitive, and so on and so on and so on. So we facilitated that, and to our surprise, because in contrast with the drones, where it took us much longer, with remote piloted barges, we got authorization much sooner. Okay. So in the meantime, that ship, the CFAR has become a mature company. They have 20 ships in operation, a company of 30 people, and they sail around with barges sometimes more than 100 kilometers away. Of course, the surrounding countries see that because the majority of the barges in Europe are in the Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, and France, and they're also working on that. So it's triggering a new market, a new capability and opportunity. And of course, autonomous shipping is facilitated by a lot of data exchange, and you can start doing fancy things with it in terms of predictions, planning, whatever, collision avoidance, smart cameras. So it's again a platform on which you can implement all these technologies. We don't do that for them, but we try to understand what technologies make sense, and then we try to figure out where we can facilitate, help, and so on. Now, fast forward, if you think in terms of, okay, maybe in 10 to 15 years, a lot of ships will be autonomous. Yeah, from an operational perspective, how are we going to communicate with them? What kind of information do they need from us in order to do a safe passage through a port? Because initially they sailed on canals, which is pretty safe. But once you enter a port, traffic comes from everywhere. So what do they need? Also, classification societies.
But so it doesn't mean in the port that you will take over control or something. It
will still be done from a remote control center, but we need to understand that they're in control. Yeah. We need to understand what kind of technology is on board that guarantees us that is a safe ship. And classification societies that have to check the safety and stability of ships and provide certification. They're working on standards where an autonomous ship has to communicate maybe once a minute or once every, I don't know what, the status of all the onboard autonomous systems to the port authority so that we can give them a virtual green light before entering the port. Because if a ship comes in from I don't know where around the world, what is the technology that has been implemented? Does it work properly, or did it have a blue screen, so to speak, already 5 times in the last half an hour? That kind of thing. So we're going to evolve in a situation that you know more about an autonomous ship than about a ship where there is a crew on board. It's kind of funny. But it's quite interesting. Yeah. And that will probably influence the information you want to get from a still manned ship. Okay, also give me the status of your engine and your electronics and stuff like that. So it's opening, it's actually an enormous innovation platform on its own.
Yeah, but you have now I'm trying to puzzle everything a bit together if I'm thinking of it. So the port platform, port authority, going from autonomous ships, detecting problems with drones, having your internal assistant, trying to optimize the whole planning of the nautical chain. There's a lot happening. It's becoming, as you say, a digital nervous system. It's Minority Report. Really, you're Tom Cruise from now on.
Tell that to your wife.
I remember that. Yeah, indeed.
I also have to jump from a stadium now.
I have to shorten a bit.
So it's quite crazy what is all going on. How do you see this evolving? And let's not just think a few years ahead. Like I can get it to more. The system will become smarter, more autonomous. Will do more tasks. Will help people more. Okay, these things are relatively simple extrapolations. The nautical chain. Hopefully, we succeed at optimizing the whole chain, and then lots of efficiency gains. But extrapolate that like far future. And then you have the Musks telling that we need to be scared for Terminator and Skynet kind of stories. And then you have others saying that nothing is going to happen and we're going to go to paradise. How do you see that? Maybe Pieter, to kick off, what's your dystopian future and what's your utopian future?
Yeah, well, if I talk to my colleagues about AI, I always use the Terminator slide to say that that's not the way we want to go to. So I don't have a crystal ball, but if there's one direction I don't want to go to, I'm not believing today that we are developing this Terminator culture. So I'm more, my wife can confirm it. I'm always a positive thinker. So I think of AI in a positive way. So it's hard to say, but I'm a believer that it will evolve in a good direction, that we can get value and more value out of it over time. So I'm not believing the dystopian
so
stories.
The future you're seeing is the one where Like we have the personal healthcare on the next level, where we have those autonomous ships creating huge gains.
I also recently I saw a talk of Jackie Jansen, and he always gives an example of to make a tower. He gives an instruction to GPT or the AI system, make me a tower of a few books, eggs, a chair, a bottle. He mentions a few items, and then he says, make me a tower of it. And it fails time over time. He say, I'm testing it already for months. It keeps failing. So the system, the AI, as we know it today, it cannot count the eggs. It cannot make a link between eggs and a bottle, or make it a reasoning behind it. There are people talking about the AGI and singularity, and that AI system in the future will start reading itself, and maybe then they will be able to build those towers. But as a positive thinker, I think then of the idea that it can help us in the future to support in different tasks or things we have to do, rather than it will become dystopian and it will start a destructive path, let's say.
And you, Erwin, what's your... Do you see dystopia? Maybe give an example of both. Where do you think it will...
Well, regarding how this is going to evolve, now we're getting a little bit philosophical because your guess is as good as mine. Well, first of all, technology doesn't define our future. We do, okay? But it's not going to happen by itself. So but a couple of things that are facts and that we have to take into consideration. First of all, technology has defined who we are. Since the moment we stepped out of a tree, picked up a stick, we have been progressing, and always for the better. Although with all these big problems in the world, you might think, well, it's opposite, but that's not true. In many areas, we have progressed and doing better for more and more people. And technology has been a very important role in that, have played an important role, and will keep doing that. People getting older, we have to make sure that healthcare stays afloat financially. So data analytics and AI is going to play a big role. Solving climate crisis is going to be driven by AI and so on. So a lot of people getting older, we have to make sure that the people are productive, can be as productive as possible. So it's a question of we need to, and there are opportunities. Now, having said that, AI has significant risks, okay? So I'm also a supporter of all these initiatives around legislation. I'm not convinced that they kill innovation, creativity, whatever. We need to have a framework. Otherwise, it's going to go the wrong way. And if you want to have an example of how it can go the wrong way, the dystopian scenario, to stay in the context of movies and series, is Netflix series Altered Carbon. That's what happens.
I haven't seen that.
Well, you should. Certainly season 1 is brilliant. That's a world that is completely feasible, where you have all the negative effects of technology that is just going bananas berserk without any kind of regulation framework, whatever. That's a dystopian world, okay? It's not the Terminator.
Can you give us a flavor of it?
Well, some people who have the money became immortal. Everybody's walking around with a stack in his head because the AI and the physical body have merged. So your entire identity, who you are, all your memories are in a stack. So if you die, you can go into another body, a sleeve. And there's an entire trade around sleeves and black market and stuff like that. And it's unbelievable.
So in that world, you can be Tom Cruise.
Yeah, well, and people ending up in a body that is not in line with where they were as a personality, and they freak out and stuff like that, and a lot of other things. But that is something that could happen. Well, the paradise scenario, well, listen, we have the moral obligation to leave a better world than the one we got. So we have to move into a better world for more and more people. But without ending up in this kind of, we all walk around happy with butterflies around our head. That's boring. But it's not a question of black and white. But we have to make sure, by showing examples of how it can be used for the better, that there is this huge potential. And there is the need as well. And then there is the technology that evolves and keeps evolving at an exponential rate. And certainly for AI, the 3 building blocks, having access to a lot of data, okay, we have that and it's increasing exponentially. compute power, we have that. And what's on the rise in quantum computing is going to take us to a level we can't even imagine what that's going to bring, because that's not exponential anymore. That's of another order. Huh? And why would you use that? Well, I can give you 5 examples why we need that kind of computing power. And that is all the techniques, the algorithms. And we also, after decades of AI, have now a portfolio of techniques we can use. So it's going to continue. And also keep in mind that once AI becomes as smart or smarter than us, and we're further down that road than many people think, and then they say, yeah, but being good in certain elements of cognitive thinking and certain elements of knowledge is not the same as what we humans can do. Well, I think we overestimate ourselves. Because in most areas, if you do benchmarks, AI surpasses us. And if you glue all these capabilities together, I think you're closer to AGI than what we want to admit. The consequence of that is that we will have to merge with AI. Otherwise, we're going to look at something that we don't understand anymore.
Merge. That sounds Neuralink implementation. That's how you
big time, yeah.
Yeah.
Big time. That's and also because a lot of people want to do that because it's going to give them advantages, what have you.
Sounds like if Neuralink is looking for test people, that you're up for it.
Sure. And also, why would you block that? Huh? Are you going to tell to paralyzed people to never walk again? If there's an opportunity to do so? Blind people, what have you? So it's going to start with medical applications, but pretty soon you will have people who have augmented themselves. A lot of people will want to do that. So it's going to happen anyway until, maybe some countries will block it, but others will do it. So it's going to be a rat race anyway. But again, if you can take advantage of that, when will that happen? I don't know. But we have always wanted to use the opportunities behind new technologies. It's always been the case in the entire human history.
And do you think you'll still see it?
I've been saying for the last 25 years to my best friends, I'll be 150 and we'll play golf on Mars. But not me physically on Mars, but in an avatar or a robot or a bionic being where I'm able to connect to and have the experience of being on Mars. And if and from a medical point of view, you just have to make sure you stay alive as long as possible, because every decade you add, you have a better chance of staying alive.
Are you a good golfer?
I don't even golf.
Okay.
But just as a goal
then if it becomes possible,
I can help you.
Or walk around or do a hike on Mars, whatever. No, it was just as a goal. And initially people laughed, but more and more of my friends who are also big readers in books like the Singularity is Nearer, and technology, they don't laugh that much anymore. They don't laugh that much anymore. Because if you start to think in exponential terms, and that's why we did, for example, these experiments again and again that failed and failed, because we knew one day it will happen. And like with speech to text, it did happen. And then we showed it to our friends from the local police who had tried it also 4 years before. And they decided it doesn't work, we're not going to do it again. They were baffled when they saw what we had achieved. They said, we thought it was impossible. 4 years ago, but now it is.
And on that bombshell, thank you, Erwin. Thank you, Pieter. It was very interesting.
Thank you, Davio.
Thank you. It was an opportunity.
See and hear you next time. Ciao.
Bye-bye.